Good morning, dear audience. What a beautiful day, what a beautiful view, I must admit, watching you sitting comfortably on your chairs while I'm standing, let's just say comfortably on stage. And I would love to tell you all about how happy we are to be here, but honestly, I'll just spare you the boring part and dive directly into the topic. A topic that is as beautiful as today and as beautiful as you are, but as a motion for a debate, we were surprised. The existence of opponents, even more surprising, but what can I say? Our motion is simple, yet very profound. Comforts can outweigh personal identity, leading individuals to adopt the culture of their host country. And as the Prime Minister, I will lay the foundation for my team, ensuring a very clear path for their arguments to flow. With clarity, ease, and, dare I say, beauty. So let's begin with the very beginning and define the key words. The heart of our motion, comfort, a word we hear often, we use often, and pursue more often than not. It's that sense of ease and well-being. As for personal identity, it's the patchworks of beliefs, traditions, and norms, and cultural habits that makes us who we are. And finally, to adopt the culture of a host country means embracing the behaviors, the social norms and tradition of a new environment. And let's be clear, this debate is not about abandoning sacred values and ethics, because those are universal. We're talking about habits and norms, those parts that can be shifted when weighted against the universal desire for comfort. Well, after this short journey into the dictionary, I would love to address the questions I can see in your curious, scary stares of yours with this story. Imagine a little kid walking into a new school, feeling like a fish out of water. The desks are different, the faces are unfamiliar, the air carries a hum of laughter, but none of it is his. This kid has two options. He can cling to what he's used to his old ways and old habits, sit alone in a corner, eat his lunch, or he can notice the jokes, he can join the group, the way everyone else is fitting in and clicking and just adapt. What do you think he'll do? Exactly what you did when you were in a very similar position. He will adapt. And after a while, this kid is fitting in, is joining the group, and is trading sandwiches for pizza slices. And what has he lost? Nothing. Not his core values, not the love his mother gave him with that lunch, but his habits and customs he carries adapted. And that same boy, grown older, makes the same choices. He exchanges small parts of his identity for comfort. Because yes, that child is no different from that immigrant who steps into a new country. The lunchbox becomes their custom, their native custom. The pizza becomes the host culture. He adapts again, not out of weakness, but because identity isn't a fortress. So, dear audience, our thesis is clear. Comfort is a powerful force, immediate and undeniable, and stronger than even identity. And my team will demonstrate how this plays out in relationships, workplaces, and entire societies. So to those who resist this truth, allow me to ask, when comfort calls, can we truly ignore it? No. The answer is as human as it is simple, and as clear as our stance is. Thank you.
A tree with deep roots will not be moved by the wind. I have another one, in case you don't understand, because I assume you are very much blinded with defending what's obviously undefendable. You can take the person out of their culture, but you cannot take the culture out of the person. Don't you think that it's rational? Why is it so hard for you to believe that this is what's right? This is what's best for the well-being of a human in a host country. Dear audience, members of the jury, opposite team, greetings. If you want to talk about comfort, let's talk about comfort, considering that it is the guiding star that illuminates the path towards well-being. Allow me to tell you that researchers show that acculturation stress, which is known as the psychological strain that arises from trying to adapt to a new culture, which I personally see you trying to defend, can negatively impact individuals who attempt to fully adopt the host country's culture. Studies such as those conducted by the American Psychological Association, APA, demonstrate that minorities and immigrants who feel pressured to adapt the host country's culture often report higher levels of acculturative stress resulting in anxiety, depression, and a decreased sense of belonging. This stress, in turn, can reinforce the desire to maintain one's original identity as a coping mechanism. This phenomenon is supported by cultural psychology, which asserts that culture is a core part of one's psychological makeup, and attempts to change it may lead to cognitive dissonance, which is known as the psychological discomfort resulting from holding contradictory beliefs and attitudes, according to Erik Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. Let me add that a 2019 study on Mexican immigrants in the United States showed that people who held onto their personal identity often reported lower levels of acculturative stress compared to those who chose to fully assimilate. This study illustrates that the people who held onto their personal identity can serve as a protective factor against the stressors of living in a new environment. Also, a study led by Padilla and Perez in 2003, known as Psychologists and Workers in the Field of Multicultural Psychology, has exactly the same results. I'm sorry, but your position leaves one sentence in my mind where you proudly say that it's perfectly reasonable and fine that people would just toss aside their personal identity the moment they find a softer couch. How weak. Let me add that a 2019 study in a large scale, including 7,000 immigrants in 13 different countries, John Barry, known as a Canadian key figure in the field of cross-cultural psychology, shows that 36% of participants prefers integration as their primary strategy, while only 17% opted for assimilation. This study illustrates that the majority prefers to integrate rather than assimilate, even while trying to adapt to a new culture. I will now leave the stage, hoping the truth will prevail. Thank you.
Oh yes, comfort, the thing we all crave. Who doesn't want to live a life free of stress, where everything just fits? It's so easy to talk about staying to one's cultural roots when you're comfortably nestled in your own family surroundings. But when you find yourself in a new land surrounded by unfamiliar sights, thought, well, that proudly holding into your identity business seems a little bit overrated, doesn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, I stand here today to argue that in the end, comforts trumps personal identity, because when comforts call, people answer. It's not that people don't care about their personal roots, it's just that comfort is the easier path. So let me introduce to you and to my dear audience to the two undeniable reasons why individuals really adopt the culture of their host country. First of all, social acceptance, or as I like to call it, the please like me syndrome. We all know how terribly it is to feel and to be the outsider, right? Now, imagine yourself in a new land where you don't, first of all, you don't know the language. Second, where everything seems strange, and where you can't seem to figure out the proper way to greet someone without looking like a total idiot. In such an environment, you realize something essential. Fitting in isn't just a nice to have, it's a survival, and social acceptance is the ultimate currency. Now, take for instance, one of the most famous football in the world, Cristiano Ronaldo. Now here's a man who could have easily strutted in Saudi Arabia. He could have kept his own his personal identity, and his own ways of acting, his own way of eating his food. But let me tell you what he did instead. And said, I am Mirando. I don't need to confirm. But let me tell you what he did instead. He started embracing Saudi culture, wearing their customs, and even started teaching his own children how to speak Arabic. And you know why? Because comfort won, as it always does. Now, I'm not talking about erasing someone's heritage or being fake. This is about taking the most efficient route to belonging and embracing the rules of the game. Now, let's talk about material gain, shall we? In many cases, adopting the local custom isn't just about blending in, it's about getting ahead. Ever heard of job interviews, network events? Those are situations where your ability to adapting to the local culture can be a deal breaker. Employers and colleagues alike are far from likely to favor you if you mirror their behaviors, the way of communication, how you answer to their compliments, whether it's a handshake or the way you answer to their compliments. Adopting the local of your host country isn't just a social maneuver, it's a career strategy. Now, if you step in that country, you will learn something essential. Culture is woven into fabric of everything. Economy, the workplace, the government system. So, it's all about finding your way to the right table. Now, before I leave you and go back to my seat, let's be real for a second. Comfort is the key to survival in a new environment. Comfort is the real key to survival in new environments, and social acceptance is the ticket to it. Adding a dose of material gains, social success, and better integration. And yes, now adopting the host country isn't just a choice, it's a necessity. So let's stop pretending that adopting the culture of your host country is the hill we need to die on. It's a luxury. Comfort is where the real power lies. And as we all say in our modern world, when in Rome, do as Romans do, or you'll be left hungry and alone. Thank you.
Distinguished members of the jury, respected opponents, good morning. There's a saying that I've heard recently. I can't recall where, to be honest, but it goes like, when in Rome, do as Romans do. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the proverb that sums up all the arguments we're about to hear from our dearest opponents along this debate. I think that most of you already understood its meaning, but its depths are yet to dive in. While the proverb may have been intended to promote cultural understanding or social harmony, it has ethical flaws that make it morally problematic. It encourages conformity without regard for the moral quality of traditions, undermines personal integrity, and simplifies complex cultural realities. So, I believe we should somehow be logical enough and understand that this is true gibberish some theologian guy decided to impose on people to trust and believe. Not convinced enough? Need more eligible proof? Well, let me enlighten you with a fragment of the plethora of frameworks there are to discuss. From a philosophical perspective, the tension between comfort and personal identity can be examined through various lenses, including ethics or even psychoanalysis. Philosophers have long grappled with the concepts of identity, the search for authenticity, and the role of comfort in human life. Aristotle, for example, savvily unveils that virtue ethics emphasizes living in accordance with virtue, which requires practicing the golden mean, a concept put to balance between excess and deficiency. And to answer the Deputy Prime Minister, comfort is a transient external good that provides temporary pleasure, but it does not contribute to the deeper fulfillment that comes from living virtuously. True personal identity is shaped by the ongoing cultivation of virtue, which requires struggle, effort, and rational action. In this light, Aristotle would support the idea that individuals should not simply follow the host culture if it means losing their authentic selves. As flourishing comes from the integration of virtue, self-respect, and authentic identity, not from a passive surrender to comfort or societal expectations. A concrete example of how virtue ethics applies to our daily lives can be seen in workplaces. Imagine you are part of a team at work where the culture is to go along decisions without questioning them, even if it means that those decisions seem to compromise ethical standards, such as cutting corners or prioritizing employee well-profit. Isn't that brutal and inhumane? So, if you decide to prioritize comfort over personal growth, you are basically saying that you are forsaking the very essence of what it means to be human, a rational being capable of achieving eudaimonia and happiness. Thank you.
Dear audience, respected members of the jury, and to our dear opponents, my distinguished salutations. You see, when I first read about the motion, I was kind of appalled and baffled. I couldn't grasp the fact that our opponents couldn't agree to it. But here we are today, trying to put some senses into these people. We are more influenced by society than we want to admit. Our very own thoughts, choices, and feelings that we think are ours often have the origins outside of ourselves. This quote from Nietzsche perfectly illustrates the capability of the human race to adapt when exposed to new and unfamiliar situations or environments. But you might be a little bit confused about why I brought up this particular saying. Bear with me, you'll understand in a second. You see, since the beginning of this debate, our opponents have been preaching the idea that you shouldn't give up your culture and you shouldn't pick up on new cultural habits from your host country. You have to, they've been saying that you shouldn't adapt to it, but when you refuse to adapt, you refuse your human nature. Let me explain. Since the dawn of time, humanity has always adapted when exposed to new, unfamiliar, or even hostile environments. And I'm sure yourselves, my opponents, you have lived this phenomenon. I'm quite sure you're not the same people that you were 5, 10 years ago. No, you're certainly not. You have adapted, you have changed, you have evolved. But that's just an example. The point is that you cannot really stop change, and even more so when paired with repetitive exposure to new information. According to Herman's Ebbinghouse's research, the human brain retains information through repetitive exposure to new information. You see where I'm going? When you go to a new country that has a different culture from yours, you get exposed to it day by day, week by week, even year by year. And it will definitely leave an impact on your old cultural identity. And let's not forget about globalization. I'm quite sure you all realize that we live in a globalized world. But what is globalization exactly? Well, according to Cambridge Dictionary, it's the process by which goods and services or cultural and social influences get similar all around the globe, which doesn't really leave a lot of room for cultural differences. And that paired with constant exposure to new information, it is inevitable. Your cultural identity will get altered. To conclude, the world is changing and wants you to change with it. And your nature is about changing. So, if you refuse to change, you refuse who you are. And if you don't disagree with me, I'm sorry, dear opponents, but you're mistaken, with all due respect. And I just hope that you open your eyes before it's too late. Thank you for your attention.
In answer to the government team, the government member, you should know that evolving doesn't mean adapting. So let's entertain the fantasy. You move to a new country, pick up their language, mimic their customs, and suddenly you're one of them. Sounds easy, right? Wrong. No matter how much you try to fit in, society has a way of reminding you that you'll always remain an outsider, no matter how much you fit in. Comfort isn't something you can earn with effort when deep-seated prejudices and systemic racism are designed to keep you in your place. For many marginalized communities, the message is clear. Adopt all you want, but you will never be truly accepted. It is naive to believe that adopting the cultures and habits of a host society can lead to true comfort, especially when this society refuses to fully accept you. This is evident in the case of Africans, especially as Moroccans living in France. Despite all the efforts to integrate, speaking fluent French, adopting local customs, and even excelling in French institutions, they remain perpetual outsiders, victims of racism and discrimination. Take the case of French colonial history and its lingering impact on the treatment of North Africans, and also the black populations. Arabs and black people often find themselves treated as judged by their ethnicity and skin color before anything else, regardless of how French they act. The recent protests and unrest in response to police violence, disappropriately targeting people of North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. Yes, accepted.
After listening to you, I just have a question. Do you think that adopting the culture of a host country just means acting like the French, as you just said right now?
No, of course not, because you literally embrace that culture and you try to do the same as them and adapt to it. So it's not the same thing. So I don't know what this is. So France is not unique in this regard. Other countries such as Germany, the UK, the USA, and even Italy show similar patterns of exclusion. Immigrants and their descendants often find themselves treated as perpetual foreigners, no matter how much they assimilate into that society and contribute to it. On the other hand, let's consider the case of foreigners who come to countries like Morocco. Most of them, if I can say all of them, retain their languages, habits, and ways of life without feeling pressured to adapt or fearing rejection. Instead, the local population often makes the effort to accommodate and welcome them, creating an environment where they can all feel comfortable. This double standard highlights a key reality. Comfort and acceptance are not simply earned by adaptation. They are granted or denied by the host society's attitudes and prejudices. This comparison underscores a key reality. Your only real weapon in the face of exclusion is your identity. Letting go of your roots in a desperate bid for acceptance often leads to losing yourself without ever gaining true belonging. Think about the pain of changing entirely, changing your language, habits, and even beliefs only to still face rejection because of your skin color or heritage. Why should you erase yourself to fit in? Your identity is not a weakness, it's your strength. Hold on to it because it's what makes you resilient and unique. Let this be a reminder. Comfort doesn't come from conformity, but from embracing who you are and standing firm against judgment. Only then we can hope to build a world where everyone is valued for exactly who they are. Thank you.
Dear Deputy of Opposition, you call it gibberish from us, I call it ignorance from you. To everyone listening and to those still debating whether they should, here we are, the final stretch, almost the end of this debate. It's Friday, the end of the week, and I think we can all agree that we're all craving a little bit of comfort, whether it's in the form of the weekend or just getting through this debate. I stand here as the last voice of my team, the voice that connects the dots, sharpens the edges, and yes, finishes the job. My team has already shown you that comfort and how comfort, far from being a weakness, can foster belonging, growth, and innovation. They've argued eloquently that adapting to a host culture isn't a betrayal of identity. It's the ultimate act of survival, evolution, and strength. Yet, our opponents cling to this narrative of cultural erosion, painting adaptation as surrender. A little comfort never hurt, they say. Well, allow me to disagree, not with the saying, but with the irony of its application today. You see, comfort doesn't just not hurt, it heals, it empowers, and I'll go so far as to say it transforms. Yet here we are still debating as though finding comfort in a host culture is a betrayal of one's soul, as though the mere act of adaptation is a crime against identity. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. You've heard it, you've probably used it, you actually did use it. Great phrase, but it's funny how selectively we apply it. When it's about fitting in to make life easier, it's practical wisdom. When it's about... Yes?
How can you prove the opposite, that comfort is just an external good that provides temporary pleasure?
Okay, I'll answer that during my intervention. As I was saying, when it's about adapting to a new culture, suddenly it's all about pride. You act like staying the same is going to preserve our roots, but I'm telling you that pride is going to be the death of you. True strength lies in knowing when to hold on and when to let go. Stubborn resistance isn't strength, it's fear disguised as pride. I don't care how much people argue that identity is everything, because when it comes down to it, comfort always wins. A Moroccan living in France doesn't stop being Moroccan just because they've learned to love baguettes or say bonjour instead of salam. Embracing new elements of culture doesn't erase your own. It adds layers to your identity, making it richer, more nuanced. You don't stop being you just become a better, more connected version of yourself. Identity isn't something fixed, it's fluid. What defines you at 15 won't be the same at 50. And that's perfectly natural, so why pretend it shouldn't be? Now, our younger challengers, the baby-faced debaters, I think they argued that discomfort is the key to staying true to yourself, that being uncomfortable somehow makes you more authentic. But what you can't seem to understand is that there's a difference between discomfort that encourages you and challenges you, and discomfort that isolates and alienates you. Growth doesn't come from running away from new experiences. It comes from leaning into them, adapting, and learning along the way. Comfort doesn't care about your cultural pride. It cares about making you feel like you're not alone, like you belong. So keep talking about how proud you are of your identity, but don't kid yourself. When it gets uncomfortable, that pride melts away faster than saying the word adaptation. We're not fighting to lose ourselves. We're fighting to grow without forgetting who we are. And if the opposition can't see that, maybe they're too stuck in yesterday to realize that tomorrow is here. You're a year younger than me, but respectfully, I feel like your mindset is decades behind. Thank you.
Dear audience, are we supposed to throw away who we are just to fit in? Some people will tell you, forget your culture, fit in or get left out. That's what our dear opposite team defend. But the truth is, if you lose your culture, you'll lose yourself. You will lose the thing that makes you special compared to other people. When you move to a new country, do you have to erase everything that makes you unique? Are we supposed to act, dress, and think like everyone else just to be accepted? If it's yes, then what's the point of being human if we all end up the same? Forgetting your roots won't make others respect you more. In fact, they will see you as someone who doesn't even respect themselves. How can we expect others to value us if we don't value where we come from? Your culture is your power. Our tradition, our food, our music, they are what makes you special. When you keep your culture alive, you are teaching others, sharing beauty, and showing strength. Why should we hide that? Would you hide that trees are the opposite team? Of course no. You will protect it, and you will be proud of it, and that's the point. You will just tell me and emphasize on the fact that we use other culture to be comfortable and to live happily. But does comfort mean happiness? Sure, it might feel easier to dress, talk, and act like everyone else, but deep and down, you will always feel something's missing. Can you really be happy if you have to pretend to be someone you are not?
POI.
Yes?
Social acceptance and being accepted in the group plays a big role in being happy. So if you don't try to adapt to their culture, you won't be able to fit in. So you won't be able to achieve happiness. So your point is...
You didn't ask me a question, you just gave me your point. Thank you. Let's be honest. Abandoning your culture, it's not adapting. It's just giving up. When changing your culture is a sign of weakness. Yes?
Do you think adopting the culture of a host country is just pretend? It's just a fake version of yourself? Does it mean that you do not have an identity anymore, like you're not who you are? What do you mean by that?
Good, but I will respond it later. I was saying that why should you have to change who you are to make others feel comfortable? Real strength is staying true to yourself. Are we ashamed of who we are? When you abandon your culture, what are you proving? That your tradition, your food, your language are not good enough. Why should we apologize for being different? It's others who should step up and respect us. Your culture is your superpower. It's your story, your flavor, your truth. Changing it just to fit in, it's like watering something beautiful and strong to make it bland and boring. To conclude my speech, dear audience, I will ask you, will you let others decide who you should be? Or will you stay true to your strength and make the world respect you for it? The choice is yours, but at least I know where I stand. Thank you.
While opponents are clinging and romanticizing, clinging to their roots, Bruce Lee said, "Be like water, my friend." And those who get it, get it. So while listening to you, dear opponents, I noticed your love to quotes and citations, so I guess I'll just play with you the same game. Maya Angelou said, we are more alike than we are unalike. So, in the pursuit of comfort, you and I and everyone else aligns with the host culture naturally and smoothly, without any choice. And leader of opposition, you kept saying and talking about the stress, but let me remind you, Carl Jung said, the greatest burden of a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents. In other words, what I mean to say is clinging too tightly to one's roots. Also, fear is far greater than the burden of the temporary discomfort of trying to find comfort itself. And thank you.
I stand before you again, and I want to thank the opposition team for their passionate defense on comfort being the ultimate goal. However, while they might emphasize on comfort being the driving force behind assimilation, I must go back to the core evidence that psychological health thrives on retaining your personal identity. Now, dear audience, I want to ask you a question, and I need you to be very honest with me. How are you expecting from someone with low self-esteem, low self-acceptance, low self-concept clarity to be productive and perform, to be the best version of himself and choose the right environment responsible for boosting his self-confidence? Dear audience, if you think that the way that leads to comfort is assimilation, you are wrong, because the moment you enter the circle of assimilation, you are faced to feel everything but comfort itself. Thank you.
Dear audience, hello again. I think our dear opponents are still living in their dream and don't really know what reality prepares for them and what real world is. So yes, it's not about what's on the surface, as I said earlier, and it's all about knowing the rules of the games while allowing doors to open that otherwise remain closed. So I will leave you with the quote that said, in a foreign country, comfort becomes a compass, guiding you toward belonging and resilience, and admit the unfamiliar. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am back again with three times more determination than when I stepped foot in this auditorium. And I will not let these people put you in the wrong with their poor judgment and so-called arguments. Let's be honest with ourselves and face the truth. Comfort is fleeting. It is a temporary balm for the soul, and it does not nurture the deeper aspects of our being. If we choose to prioritize comfort, whether it's going along with unethical workplace practices or simply conforming to societal norms, we are sacrificing personal growth and moral integrity. I believe in you people. I believe that you can make the right decisions and choose what is right. Thank you.
Dear audience, I'm back again on stage to give our opponents a vocabulary lesson, since they don't seem to quite get the meaning of certain words. They mentioned that adapting and evolving aren't the same thing, are related, but according to Cambridge Dictionary, adaptation is the process of changing to suit different environments, while evolving is to change gradually. So I don't understand why you mentioned that they are unrelated. And before I go away from stage, I'll leave you with a quote from Einstein. He said, "The measure of intelligence is the ability to change. Be smart, accept change." Thank you for your attention.
Dear opponent, you must have not listened to what I said. I didn't say they were different. They are related, but not the same thing. Let's rethink the idea that comfort means letting go of who we are. Does real connection come from blending in or from being accepted as we are? The strength of multicultural societies comes from their differences, not their sameness. Communities grow richer when people bring their unique cultures, languages, and stories. Real connection isn't about changing to fit in. It's about respecting and valuing one another's differences. When people are pressured to conform, the result is often shallow and empty. They may seem to fit in on the surface, but they feel lost and disconnected inside. True belonging happens in a society that celebrates diversity, not asks people to hide it. So why give up who we are to chase a comfort that isn't even real? And I repeat it again, a stronger, more united society is one who values their people for exactly who they are. Thank you.
Comfort isn't weakness, it's where strength begins. It's not the end of identity, but the start of what wins.
You hold on to a past that cannot stay while we embrace a future that leads the way. It's Friday, the week's final call. Will you grow with the times or be left behind it all? Thank you.
Are we seriously saying that comfort is more important than identity? It's just giving up. Your identity, it's your roots, your pride, it's what makes you you. If you are willing to trade that for an easier life, what's left for you? Are you really living or just surviving? Look at immigrant communities everywhere. They keep their tradition, their language, their culture alive. Why? Because they know that abandoning who you are, it's not adapting, it's erasing yourself. So no, comfort doesn't outweigh identity. If it does for you, dear opposite team, then maybe ask yourself this. What are you really afraid of? Standing out or standing up for who you are? Thank you.